Okay, now that we have a general idea of what we want to achieve, let's start, before even making a backdoor, by trying to establish a connection between the victim computer and the hacker. Now, the first step into doing that is to listen for incoming connections on a specific port on the hacker's machine, on the hacker's computer. We're actually going to write a program to do this later on in the course, but for now I want to keep this as simple as possible. So we're actually going to listen for incoming connections using a tool called Netcat. Now, this is a program that's widely used in many scenarios when it comes to penetration testing, and one very useful use to it is to literally open a port and wait for incoming connections. We can do this by typing nc, which is the name of the program. I'm going to do -vv to see comprehensive information about what's happening when the program is running. I'm going to say I want to listen by doing -l, and I'm going to specify the port that I want to listen to by doing -p, and then I'm going to put the port that I want to listen on. And the port that I want to listen on is port 4444. Now, you can use port 80 or 8080, which are ports that, like I said, are used by web servers, so the backdoor will be less detectable. But for now, this will work, it's fine. So I'm going to hit enter, and as you can see, this is telling us that it's listening on any IP for port 4444. So basically, my computer now is ready to receive data on port 4444. So this is something that is similar to this diagram where I have the port is open and it's waiting for incoming connections. The next step is to actually establish a connection from the victim machine to the computer that is listening for incoming connections, and that's my hacker machine. Now, you can see this line, like I said, this represents a pipe where the data is going to flow. And we're going to establish this pipe or this connection or this socket using the socket library in Python. Now, like I said, this library can be used to establish a connection and transfer data between two computers. It can be used in a lot of scenarios where you need to transfer data between two computers, but since this is a hacking course, we're going to be using this library to create a backdoor. But what I'm going to be doing right now can be used in any program that you might need to transfer data in. So I'm actually going to write this program in my Windows machine because that's going to be the target machine, and it'll be easier to write the program there than writing it in Kali and then transferring it to the Windows machine. So I already installed a text editor that's called Sublime Text. I told you about it before. It doesn't have as many features as PyCharm, but it works perfectly. And you can install PyCharm if you want, so that doesn't really matter. And I've already created a new file called reverse backdoor, and this file is stored in my users, Zaid, Python projects, and the name of the file reversebackdoor.py. Now, the first thing that we need to do is import the socket library. This is the library that's going to allow us to establish the connection or the pipe which is going to be used to transfer data between the two computers. Once we have this library imported, we can use it. And the first thing that we're going to do is create an instance of a socket object. So I'm going to say connection, which is going to be my variable. That's going to be equal to socket. So this is the name of the library. And we want to use a socket object that is programmed in the socket library. So as we've seen before, this is just a class that is programmed in the socket library. And when creating this object, we need to pass two arguments. The first argument is the address family that's going to be used in this connection. And in most cases, you want to use socket.afinet. And the second argument is the socket type. And this is, again, in most scenarios, when you want to establish a TCP connection, you'd want to use a socket.sockstream. Now, I know what you're thinking. How the hell did I know what to use in here? Well, I didn't discover this myself. All of this is included in the documentation of the library, which is the first thing that I said when we started this course. Every time you need to use a library, it's a very good idea to have a quick read through the library. You don't really need to read all of the functions in the library, just read the functions and the objects that you actually need to use. So I'm going to include a link to this library in the resources of this lecture, so you can read it and get more information about it. But this is the most common way that you're going to need to use when creating a connection or a socket object. Now, once we have this object created, we still didn't connect to anything yet. So to connect, we're going to say connection, which is the name of the variable that we just created that holds an instance of the socket object. And we're going to use a method that is called connect. So this method will basically connect this socket, will connect this pipe to a destination. So in order to connect to a destination, we have to first of all specify the IP of this destination. And in my case, I'm going to put the IP of the Kali machine, which is 10.0.2.16. You can get the IP by running ifconfig on Kali, as you know. And the next argument that we're gonna pass is the port that is open on the target computer so that we can connect to it. And in our case, we listened on port 4444. So what we're doing right now is basically creating this line right here. So we're connecting, first of all, we're specifying the IP of the hacker machine. Then we're specifying the port, which is this circle right here, which is port 4444. Then the arrow will know where to go. It'll be able to connect to this port and it'll establish my connection, which is going to be something that looks like this, where we'll be able to transfer data between the two machines. Now notice in here I actually have two brackets, not one bracket, because the connect method takes a tuple. So it takes a data type that is made up of two values. Therefore, instead of making a variable there and passing it, we're just passing it directly to the connect method. Now, if you look at our code, it's very simple. First of all, we're creating a socket object. We're storing a reference for this object in a variable called connection. And then we're calling a method called connect, and we're specifying the IP and the port that we want to connect to. And like I said, all of this can be used to establish a connection between two computers, regardless of the reason why you need this connection. We're still not hacking or doing anything evil on the target computer. Now this code is very simple, but let's test it out and make sure that we'll actually be able to connect. So if you look at the Kali machine right now, you can see that it's still listening on port 4444, waiting for incoming connections. Now I'm going to go on my command prompt. And first of all, I'm going to navigate to the directory where I have this program. So I'm going to do cd python projects. And then I'm going to run the program by calling my Python interpreter, followed by the program name, which is reverse backdoor.py. Now, if I hit enter, we will get an error. And let's see what the error is. I misspelled socket. So we'll fix that quickly. And let's run this again. And I have another spelling mistake, which is in here. I'm sorry about this, but I actually make a lot of spelling mistakes, as you probably know by now. So if we run this again, as you can see, it got executed. So it ran with no errors. And if we go in here, you'll see that we actually received the connection from 10.0.2.7, which is the IP of the Windows machine. And there was 0 data sent and 0 data received. So basically we didn't send or receive anything, but we were able to establish a connection between the two computers. Now this connection didn't last for long, it only lasted for a very short period of time, but the connection was established. So this is a start. And like I said, this is a generic method of creating a connection or a socket between two computers so you can transfer data between them. In the next lecture, we'll build on this. We'll see how we can maintain this connection and then start being able to send and receive data, execute commands, and so on.